TLO, what's pop? We are on Twitch. We are live. Speaking of being live on Twitch, this is the most people I've ever had on a live is in this Twitch live right now. So I salute, man. I appreciate everybody who shows up to the lives, man. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather be doing lives on Twitch than anything else. And eventually, that's just what it's going to be. So I hope everybody comes one day. But anyway, leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on your post notification bells. Let's continue to grow the family from Chicago to the UK. If you do miss a live or you want to start coming to the lives, this is twitch.com. TheeLitOne. It's right there in your face, man. I'ma leave it. Don't forget, we do got Patreon. We post 5 days a week. Stuff that we watch on Twitch that doesn't get posted to YouTube normally gets posted to Patreon. And we also got merch. The link to all of that is down in the description, man. This is British Crime Only. I'm already subbed. I'm liking the video. We watched a video of theirs last week. And I salute the behavior of this channel. They got some good stuff on here. So salute to British Crime Only, man. If you haven't followed them, man, go follow them, man. I rock with them. Let's get into it, man.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. No copyright infringement intended. All rights belong to their respective owners.
You get me? Take that off, Buster. How you say that? Gloucester shit? Gloucester?
4 years. Gloucestershire.
Oh, he said it. Hold on.
Been in the police now for 24 years. Gloucestershire is a lovely place to live, a lovely place to bring up your families. But from a policing point of view, like everywhere, there's always an underbelly to every idyllic town. There's been a rise in gang criminality and that sort of mentality of people wanting.
Man, hold on. I think my camera is blurry. It keeps going out of focus. Hold on. Let me try to fix it real quick.
To force their will on others.
In December 2017, police in Gloucester received reports of a spate of violence linked to one gang.
The accent is tough.
We had a series of violent assaults, ended up in an attempt murder.
This dangerous gang had a hold on drug dealing in the city.
They were based out of Gloucester, but they were dealing drugs to people as far afield as Stroud and Cheltenham. They had quite a wide connection of customers.
Given the scale of the network and the extreme violence involved, a specialist team were created to bring the gang and its suspected...
I hope it's got a corny name. What's the specialist team?
Investigating officer for that unit. Matt's responsibility as my deputy is to understand the intricate detail of the investigation. He's incredibly meticulous.
I oversaw the team of detectives who would look at all the information coming in
Matt,
and
Steve
assess
Arnott.
all the evidence we were collecting, whether that was from surveillance or the telecoms information we were able to get.
Dan is our lead investigator. He's the person that actually goes out and collates all the statements and all the evidence that we need.
The thing is, I don't stop. My inspector, Matt Phillips, sometimes has to say enough is enough now, and we have to draw a line on it.
Concentrate fire.
Operation Solero was established in May 2018 to stop the cocaine dealing gang.
I'm just having a wee bit of rice. I got it. A wee bit of rice. A wee bit of rice. My bad. I had to. It was two there for.
We do a thing called lifestyling to start with, and that's purely just to understand what time do they get up in the morning, what time do they go to bed at night.
We began to build a chart of who was associating with who, the locations they'd frequent, and simple things just like which cars they were using so we could understand their movements. We can't just deploy surveillance willy-nilly on everyone. There has to be a compelling case of intelligence and information so we can get the relevant authorities to go out and conduct surveillance.
By June 2018, 4 weeks later, they had identified that the gang's leader had a number 2, who he trusted to run the illegal enterprise.
Our main man wouldn't be hands-on. He's not going to go collect the drugs. He's not going to be handing them out to the drug dealers.
His number 2 was our main focus.
He had 2 careers effectively. He worked as a personal trainer and he was a volunteer as a DJ on a local radio station.
He was the person going to meet all of the lower level suppliers. He was going to lead us to the other people that were involved.
Surveillance started to follow the gang's number 2.
He was linked to an address in an area called Willowlees.
We thought this was probably a place where he was storing his drugs.
He would frequently attend there and then go on and have short meetings in his vehicle where he would meet in a lay-by or a pub car park. Someone would jump in his car just for a matter of seconds and then be gone. And they had all the hallmarks of a drug deal. What we felt this group were doing, rather than selling to end users, they would split a kilogram block down into 9 ounces or quarter kilogram and then sell them on to further dealers. Crucially to an investigation like this is understanding the mobile telephones they use and who they communicate with on a frequent basis.
Most of the people that were involved in this had BQ Aquarius phones.
These phones were highly encrypted and hugely expensive, which gave fresh clues about the significant scale of the cocaine dealing.
EncroChat was a piece of software that was placed on these phones. You could only communicate with people that allowed access, so that they had this very secure network of encrypted communication. Your bog standard drug dealer doesn't have these phones. There's only one reason why you'd have one of these phones, is because you're at a particular level where your profit margin is such that you can afford to have one of these phones.
Whilst these encrypted phones were being used by the gang, police remained one step behind. Until they could understand how the gang were communicating, continuing surveillance was their only real option, and the police still didn't know where the gang's cocaine supply came from. Until a key breakthrough, 8 weeks into the investigation.
His number 2 met with a vehicle. Interestingly, on this occasion, he went into the vehicle with a bag and came out without a bag, effectively empty-handed. That made it look to us that potentially he was paying that person money as opposed to giving them drugs, or they were taking drugs from him. Once we started to research that vehicle, we understood that it had simply travelled from London that day for a couple of minutes and then made the return trip back to London.
Y'all ain't book them in
We
London?
start realising then that this is likely to be our courier vehicle. That really opened up the investigation for us.
Now I had a car, now I had a face, and I would be able to do so much with that.
Imagine though, the number 2 guy, look at all the connections he has. He's a personal trainer. You know how many trappers come to the gym? He's a radio DJ. Like, come on now. He's in the industry. Like, man, he
The team were now confident that the drugs started in London.
fall guy though.
But police had no idea who the courier was and didn't know who he worked for.
Who he worked for?
DI Matt Phillips accessed the National Automatic Number Plate Recognition Network, known as ANPR. These cameras placed on roads across the country record every number plate that passes by.
That might be an AI-generated person reading that script. That's kind of...
We began to look at the automatic number plate recognition system to understand where in the country the vehicle travelled.
He was using a Citroen D3 or something, a very nondescript car, a little family car. No one's ever going to really think anything of that.
And we could see it really travelled across the whole of the southwest on a daily basis. It had all the hallmarks of a classic courier vehicle.
We were also able to go back historically to understand how many times he'd been before and what his routines were when he came into Gloucester.
You go back?
But the police hadn't identified the man behind this courier, the Mr. Big supplying the Gloucester gang. And they still didn't have the evidence to link the gang's boss to any of the cocaine.
You don't want to show your hand too early because the criminals will simply change up their routine and you're almost back to the beginning again. If we arrest his number 2, someone like the head of this organised crime group will just find somebody else the next day and the problem will keep going.
Never front your move in anything.
Opera GX! You wouldn't want your Roblox...
Gloucestershire Constabulary established Operation Solero
Yes,
in
you have missed
2018 to snare a prolific and violent drug-dealing gang.
We had a series of violent assaults, ended up in an attempt murder.
Police had discovered the gang's number 2 would regularly receive supply drops from a London-based group.
He would have short meetings in his vehicle. In a lay-by or a pub car park, someone would jump in his car just for a matter of seconds, and they had all the hallmarks of a drug deal.
But they hadn't identified the Mr. Big behind the London group.
Mr. Big.
And they still didn't have enough evidence to connect the Gloucester gang boss to the crime.
It became apparent the head of this organised crime group no longer had access to his encrypted phone. He had to resort back to a normal, what we would call a burner phone, a cheap phone that you can use for a few days or weeks and then throw away.
This was a major opportunity for police to link the gang boss.
That's all they needed.
In October 2018, 4 months into the surveillance operation, there was a second significant event.
We were able to capture text messages to the subjects after we seized the phones, talking about delivering paint and needing paint pots. In my mind, it's all code. It was quite amusing, really, because the 2 of them were seen on surveillance handing over paint pots at a petrol station to try to avoid being caught.
It was the first time the police surveillance operation had caught the gang boss handling what they suspected were drugs.
Yeah, painter's gear and
The decision
everything.
above me had been made that we had to move to an arrest phase. It was time that we actually started to take some people out, arresting them, and hopefully seizing drugs.
Is he blurred because he
At
does
the end
undercover
of
work?
October, and with the gang boss at last implicated in the crime, police moved to try and build
Crime.
their evidence base by arresting street dealers in the act.
The next time that we saw the number 2 supplying a lower level drug dealer, we were going to take action.
Within a couple of days, 2 opportunities presented themselves. The subject went and met a customer. We knew who those customers were because we'd identified them already as part of the operation. We could be fairly happy that there would be a drugs exchange. Ian Fletcher made the decision to have the cars stopped if they were in a car or the person stopped if they were on foot. On the first occasion, it was a gentleman who lived in Stonehouse, and he'd met the number 2 local in Gloucester and was travelling back in his vehicle when officers stopped that car, and he was found in possession of a quarter of a kilo of cocaine.
We were starting to gather evidence by arresting people
Can't put that nowhere. You just got to take that charge. It's
being
over.
supplied so that we could say to the court that we saw a meeting between these 2 men, and after that we went to stop the person who bought the drugs, and lo and behold, they had drugs on them. We were asking the court to infer that all the other times when we didn't take drugs out, the exact same thing was happening. The pattern.
That's hearsay. You get a good lawyer, nah, that's not gonna hold up.
And it's the same. It's so important, the pattern.
We identified that person that was operating more in the actual city centre, more on foot.
The surveillance team were deployed, and we knew that he'd met with a male, and we had the arrest team ahead and waiting.
It'll be on Patreon.
It's a really delicate and really difficult situation because you don't want to make too much
Or you could just wait until this is over and rewatch it.
noise.
We work really strongly with our tactical operations team. They're overt police officers. They can, if needs be, enforce a stop on a vehicle, so do it very dynamically so people don't have the time to discard drugs or throw their phones away.
After 5 months of surveillance on the gang, police had enough evidence to arrest the leader and his number 2. Their ambitious plan was to arrest them both and bring everything to an end in one swoop. Operation Solero targeted the next cocaine drop by their London-based supplier.
We saw what appeared to be an exchange take place between the 2 of them, and we saw the suspect walking back towards the Willerleys flat with bags in his hand. And that's the time when I made a decision that we were going to strike.
Got him.
He goes round into like an outhouse shed area in that address. And very shortly after, a number of police officers come running in and arrest him in possession of what appeared at that time to be a large quantity of cocaine.
But there was a problem. While the number 2 was caught with the drugs, the gang's leader was with friends and family nearly 60 miles away.
Immediately our attention switched to the head of this organised crime group, who was actually in a restaurant in Cardiff. And so at that point we knew it was important to get him into custody at the same time before he became aware of the arrests back in Gloucestershire.
In the restaurant, we used the CCTV to actually show when he was using the telephone. Something had happened to his encrypted device, so he started to use a standard Nokia phone. We'd say, without doubt, those calls were being made to speak to the person who was controlling and supplying the drugs from London.
So when officers went to identify themselves so that they could arrest him, he tried to run away to start with. He ran through a car park and threw a number of mobile phones on the floor, but fortunately the officers were able to catch him and seize the mobile phones, which later gave us a bit of an answer to one of the pieces of the puzzle.
Analysis of the phone provided the biggest breakthrough yet. The identity of the Mr. Big in London supplying the cocaine.
You had him by first
Initially,
name
I
in
called
there?
him London A because I didn't have a name, but I had a phone number for him. And that was the number that he was speaking to our principal target. He used that phone to call the council that he was living in, and I identified the person who was supplying the drugs from London. He was communicating with an encrypted device that was a match to the other devices. There was an information marker so that if he tried to leave the country, we would know and then we'd be able to arrest him.
After a 6-month investigation, police...
What kind of month?
Be able to arrest him.
After a 6-month investigation...
Is she saying 6? Or is she a little bit, you know what I'm saying, freaky? What's tough?
Police had enough evidence to take down both the Gloucester gang and the London connection who supplied them cocaine. They waited for London's Mr. Big to make a move.
It was, I think, maybe about 10:30 at night on a Sunday. Got a phone call. It's Luton Police here, and we've got your man.
He was trying to flee?
10 grand stuffed in his shoes, really expensive sunglasses and all like designer gear and everything. I went with the search officers to London, so didn't sleep that night. I came back with all the evidence from the house. I didn't sleep that day. I prepared my interview, didn't sleep then. Went and interviewed him, buzzing the whole time through.
Operation Solero seized 2 kilograms of cocaine, but they had evidence of a further 24 kilograms of cocaine, with an estimated value of £1 million. They also found £100,000 in cash.
The London supplier is going to get 12 years. It's over.
The Gloucester gang boss was sentenced to 12 years and 9 months in prison. His number 2 was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The Albanian courier was sentenced to 8 years in prison. And his boss, the real Mr. Big, was arrested at Luton Airport and sentenced to over 8 years in prison.
Dang, man. Nobody got less than an 8-piece McNugget? Oh.
So hard to get this guy, and to have him there in front of me was just brilliant.
I still believe that that's lighter than American sentences. Everybody would have got 15 plus.
The work that I put in on that meant that he pleaded guilty in interview. He actually gave me a prepared statement where he said, yes, it was me.
Dang.
Most people have...
I had that boy bang the rights. He was, you know what, I'm done. Lock me up. But you know what's crazy? They probably gonna go into jail, and knowing how jail is, they probably gonna make double, triple what they was making on the outside.
Robbery with threats of force or violence is considered extremely serious. It carries a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. Rising rates of street robbery have become such a concern. The government has injected almost £20 million into tackling this specific problem. In England and Wales during 2021, on average there were 42 incidents every day of a knife or sharp instrument being used in a robbery.
Kent's generally a nice place to live and work. I've lived here all my life. We have a border with the Metropolitan Police and other forces and the coastline, so there are challenges within Kent Police.
Kent is an old county with over 18,000 listed buildings. But in 2021, this picturesque region has youth unemployment higher than the national average. And drug
would never move there.
Abuse is an
when I hear youth unemployment is high, that means it's a lot of thugging going on over there. I'm cool.
Ongoing problem.
The criminals have a range
Salute to Kent, though, man. Beautiful place.
of motives. At the core of that sometimes is substance misuse, drug taking. They obviously can't fund that habit legally, and so they choose to commit crime. Other times it's because they want to make money and they're not interested in going to work to do that.
February 2021. Reports of an armed
LYD.
robbery on the high street of Lyd came into the Chief Constable's crime squad. It was a shocking incident in a normally quiet town.
Lyd's quite a small community. To be threatened as a member of the public during the day in the street is a rare event. For this suspect to use the threat of any weapon, it shows the level he's prepared to go to. And when it happens, it's obviously quite grave, quite serious, quite impactful on the victim.
Putting a specialist team onto the crime quickly was a top priority.
Sophie and Scott were selected to investigate this case. They've got the skills and the ability and the tenacity to identify who the suspect may be. Sophie West has been with the team since its inception. She's a really solid investigator, very intelligent.
I'm very nosy. I like investigating things and getting to the bottom and finding out what's happened. Seeing cases on
Sophie got that.
TV
All right.
always fascinated me, and I enjoyed watching crime documentaries. Which
Me too, Soph.
growing up, but no, it all inspired me to be a detective.
Scott came from an intelligence background, but he's able to adapt that to evidence and investigations.
I got into policing at the age of 22. I'd wanted to do for a few years, something that had really interested me. So I wanted to go and have a try, and yeah, a good few years later, I'm still here, so I must have made the right decision.
Sophie and Scott work really well together. They're both very tenacious, and they also look a little bit further and a little bit deeper to identify lines of inquiry and evidence that others might not spot.
Try hard.
The operation was up and running, and the crime-fighting duo needed to talk with the victim, a lone female.
With investigations like this, it's a worry that the offender can commit another offence before you can get hold of them.
We needed to go down to Lyd. We needed to visit the victim, to introduce ourselves as the investigating officers.
Nah, I swear, Sophie do look like AI. She don't look real.
And got a detailed account from her as to where she'd been and what had happened and where the offender had gone. And got a detailed account from her as to where she'd been.
Why is his left eye only blinking? 2 bots is tough.
And what had happened and where the offender had gone. She was clearly very, very upset, very emotional. And I don't necessarily think it enters the thought process of the offenders. For them, it's a 2-minute, 5-minute bit of work to get them whatever they want to get out of it. But they can leave a lifetime of issues behind.
It was a Sunday afternoon. This lady was walking along, taking some money to a friend who unfortunately couldn't leave their house. She had somebody say, "Excuse me." She stopped and she turned around. The man said to her, "Do you have some coins? I'm homeless. I need some money."
And she produced a pound and gave him the pound.
He became threatening and quite aggressive towards her.
He produced a small bladed article. He was jabbing this towards her and being more forceful in his tone.
She took the quite drastic decision to run out in the road in front of a passing car, which she flagged down. And at that point, the male, he ran across the road into the graveyard, and they didn't see him again.
She made the right choice.
The willingness to use a sharp weapon meant the police were concerned that the offender's next crime could prove even more serious. The team needed to quickly gather evidence.
We decided...
That's the thing, man. Let me tell y'all something. There's nothing wrong to give the less fortunate money, but you also got to never lack at the same time. If you don't have loose change in your pocket, if you have to ruffle around in your purse or reach into your pocket and there's dollar bills, like paper money that you don't want to give out, you don't say you, so just say you don't got it. Because letting them see your purse, letting them see, like, you never know. Now, I'm not saying all people are like that, but I'm saying a lot of them are. You gotta be careful. If you don't have loose change readily available, then just say no.
That we would walk up and down the high street to look for any CCTV cameras. which may have captured any images of the offence being committed.
From those CCTV bits and pieces, it was quite clear.
Yeah, and I understand that it's illegal to not lack in England, but at the same time, lacking just means if you're lacking, you could just be not paying attention to your surroundings. If you're lacking, you could just be doing stuff, putting yourself into a predicament that you shouldn't. And reaching into your purse and pulling out change is lacking. Just say no.
That the offender had seemingly come from the bottom end of the high street.
We collected an image of the suspect.
He had his hood up, really tight round his face, and he had a green mask covering up the lower half, so you could only really see his eyes.
He was wearing sort of off-white coloured trainers. We were aware these were the items of clothing that we needed to be mindful of when we were searching.
You could make out it was a male, and you could make out he was tall and slim, but not much more than that.
Very distinctive walk,
though. By the end of the first day, police had exhausted all of their video footage, but had no positive ID for their suspect.
We'd got as far as we could with the CCTV, and we really didn't know who this chap was.
What's up, everyone? Chuck here, owner and conductor of the...
All right, chill, Chuck. Man, damn, I'm hungry now. You eating brisket? What was that? Chuck look like me is crazy. That's wild.
Kent police established Operation Fathom in February 2021 to swiftly solve an armed street robbery.
For this suspect to use the threat of any weapon, it shows the level he's prepared to go to.
For them, it's a 2-minute, 5-minute bit of work to get their whatever they want to get out of it, but they can leave a lifetime of issues behind.
The criminal had struck in the sleepy town of Lydd. On day one, police had found CCTV of their suspect, but he was well covered up, so they didn't know who he was.
I took the focus and tried to look at what else had gone on in Lydd beforehand to see if there was any similar types of crimes that had occurred before this offence. The only thing that happened around the time of the robbery was a domestic at an address down the end of Lydd High Street that we were interested in.
We established that a person had been staying at the house. He was the partner of one of the ladies who was living in the house, and he had since left. His last name was Smith, and he was in his 20s.
This lateral thinking had led to the first breakthrough for Operation Fathom, a potential name. Day 2 of the fast-moving investigation now turned.
I don't know, it feels weird that they named this, like they're calling a one-man hunt an Operation Fathom.
Database search.
Like I thought that was just for like big stuff.
The surname Smith.
We conducted a open source search on social media, and he had a profile on Facebook. There were some photographs on there. He resembled the person who we had identified in the CCTV.
Operation Fathom seemed to be progressing until further digging revealed a problem.
We searched James Smith on our police intelligence system, and we soon established that actually James Smith was an alias.
The armed robber's real identity remained a mystery, so they turned back to their strongest lead, the house in Lydd where Smith had stayed.
We had an address where we thought that our robber had come from, and we were more confident at this point. It was about then trying to get back down to Lydd to see if we could put some more meat on the bone. Could we get any more CCTV going back towards
also known as
address?
It's an AKA.
Day 3 of the investigation.
Somebody in the chat said, what's an alias? An alias is like an also known as, like a name used to other than their real name. Like my alias is TheeLitOne.
With the clock ticking, Operation Fathom returned to Lydd.
The quality of the CCTV, it was good, but it wasn't good enough. We knew where the robbery had taken place. We knew the route where the suspect had run away after committing the robbery. we had to walk the route to identify any further CCTV cameras.
After trawling the high street, officers found themselves outside the house where the robber had been staying.
This address was just off the high street, so what else could we do to try and put him near that address?
We noticed that they had a Ring doorbell camera.
We asked if we could have a look through the footage and see if we could get an image of who this lad was.
I don't know if this is the same, but in America, you can no longer be asked to give your footage up from your Ring doorbell. If a police officer comes and asks you for it, you have the right to say no. And even if they would have to subpoena it, they would have to get a court order for it.
They let us review their Ring doorbell footage. We were able to go back to the date of the incident. We saw that he left the house wearing the clothing that we'd seen in the CCTV. It's a lot clearer. Well, you could see his face, and it was easy to identify distinguishable features. Clearer.
And where was they staying at? Why is it so? It was a hoarder.
You could see his face.
They need grim fighters.
To identify distinguishable features.
He fitted the size, the build, the height.
We quickly established
the same scarf on his head.
It was him. We were related because we knew that we were one step closer to finding out who he was.
This was a major breakthrough. Now armed with the doorbell footage and even more CCTV from the high street, officers tried to piece together the moments that led up to the armed robbery.
There were some CCTV opportunities in back streets. He left the address, walking down these back streets, and he went back the same way. Although we couldn't see exactly where he went, he generally walked into the direction of the address that we were concentrating our efforts on at this point.
The case against the unknown suspect was building, and further digging at last revealed what they hoped was his real identity. But arresting him would not be easy.
We established that this alias name came back on a search for the person who committed this crime. The suspect has previously
He was looking for all licks. Boy was outside trying to just get money.
Didn't know where he was, didn't know where he would be. He could have been anywhere in the county, he could have been anywhere in the country, to be quite honest. Then did a little bit of phone work around our target's phone, and his phone suggested that he was living in Chatham. He was then researching addresses and locations in that area through whatever means we can get hold of.
Finally, 8 days after the armed street robbery, the police were ready to arrest the prime suspect.
We established the address of where he might be staying,
which was a house of multiple occupancy.
And on the 22nd of February, in the early morning, we all travelled up to Chatham.
Knocked on the door, covered the front, covered the back, make sure there could be no escape. One of the other residents has let us in, and we've gone up to his room.
He woke up and opened the door. Soon after that, he was under arrest.
He was transferred to a custody suite and was soon face to face with PC West and PC Drake.
Do you know what a robbery is? Taking something that isn't yours without the intention of giving it back by using some method of violence.
Initially, our suspect was quite confident, if I remember rightly.
It is suspicious why someone's walking down the road with a hood up and their face covered. If I saw that immediately, raise alarm bells. Yeah.
What's he doing at his car?
He's probably having a rummage around that one too.
Out on the thief is how I would describe his behaviour.
You're asking me the questions, I'm going to ask you a question. DNA in the cars. Surely if he's rummaging two cars.
We're here today to talk about robberies.
Is that you in the grey hoodie?
No, sir. He looks quite well built in that picture, if you don't mind me saying.
Is that you?
That's not me at all, sir, no.
He refused to accept any involvement in the robbery whatsoever.
Why would he?
Who is that male?
That male is me, sir, wearing my jacket that I've got on now in custody.
And what else?
A grey hoodie.
A grey hoodie.
Without intentionally landing myself in trouble here, I can see a resemblance between me and the person in that video.
Let's cut the rubbish. If that's not you, who is it?
He denied that this was him, despite the strong resemblance. And he suggested that it was somebody else who'd let themselves into the house as and when they please.
I don't think he told the truth all the way through the interview.
Listen, no, all right, I've got to say mine back, yeah? He's a weed dealer.
He's a weed dealer?
Yeah.
When somebody denies it, it's not a massive issue. If you know your case as well as we knew this one, we didn't need a confession. The evidence was there. It was him. So if he wants to sit and lie to us for an hour...
Yeah, my boy, you red-handed in there. It's over with.
Crack on and lie.
Let me show you how we do stuff.
If they didn't have you walking into your house with the mask off and maybe you just still had the mask on while you was walking in, okay. But boy, they seen
Suspect's refusal to confess meant the case against him had to be watertight. The team waited on the results of the ID parade, which was now crucial.
The ID parade was carried out, and one of my colleagues in the ID team called me up soon after and he said, it's a positive identification.
The offender was charged with robbery, possession of a bladed article, and possession of cannabis. At court, he finally confessed by pleading guilty. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison and a further 4 years on licence after his release.
To get the outcome was brilliant, and the victim was absolutely over the moon, which is, without sounding too silly, that is why we do it. To hear her crying, good, happy tears was
Bro got 6 years prison, 4 years probation, and really he only got that for doing it with the bladed article. If he didn't do it with the bladed article, he would have got a third of that, even if that. How do they squeeze 3 stories in?
Recent government estimates suggest that over 838,000 people take part in metal detecting. It's a popular hobby. But not all of these detectorists are doing it legitimately. Historic England estimates that nearly 1 in 5 of the country's treasured listed buildings have been targeted by criminals. And metal detecting is one of the favoured tactics.
I don't understand what we're talking about. Like a beep, 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 beep metal detector?
So I've been in the police for almost 2 decades. You kind of get used to your bread and butter policing, although it's always kind of evolving.
In 2020, across Europe, over 94,000 artefacts from illicit excavations were seized. In Cheshire, police decided to play their part in stopping this type of crime.
That's a crime.
So in 2019, we started the rural crime team that was dedicated to look after rural crime, wildlife crime, heritage crime, and waste crime.
Okay.
Let's get confidence back in rural policing. Let's get people reporting it, feeling like their concerns are going to be...
Like, I didn't even know. If I had a metal detector and I was just somewhere, I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't even know I was committing a crime.
Taken seriously.
In December 2019, Cheshire's Rural Crime Unit received reports of strange activity at a remote local castle.
One of our fantastic sites, Beeston Castle, was being targeted by nighthawkers. Nighthawkers is this unusual name for those that take out their metal detectors, go out under the cover of darkness and dig up historic artefacts with no permissions in place.
The remains of 800-year-old Beeston Castle are perched high on a crag above Cheshire Plain. It's extremely isolated and typical of the historic sites across the country that have previously yielded thousands of pounds of irreplaceable treasure.
Where do we even start?
Right, where do you get permission from?
This? It's a huge area. It being in a rural location, you haven't got like the CCTV, you haven't got all the other bits that you'd normally get in an urban area.
Sergeant Simpson assigned a crack team to tackle this very unique crime.
My job as a supervisor is really easy when I've got a really enthusiastic team. They do all the hard work in that sense. PC Tether is committed to getting the right result. So he was first choice to get stuck in.
Just being out there and trying to help the rural communities. So I want to follow that.
My God, this not even real. This fake news.
Passion really, police in the rural area. Being brought up around in the countryside, in the back and beyond, I've always had appreciation for the countryside.
It's a partnership thing when it comes to policing our...
Right, Indiana Jones did this, so how is it? You know what I'm saying? He got multiple movies out.
We need experts. You know, the police, we do not know everything. We need all the help we can get. So we go to our partners like Historic England and
Laura Croft
and Mark Harrison.
I'm the head of Heritage Crime Strategy for Historic England. My role came about as a result of a report into illicit metal detecting. We've now got the capacity, the capability and the skills to investigate and to bring those people to justice.
Gee, I will end the video. What are y'all talking about?
The team's first task was to understand what the thieves had done.
We've had training with identifying the work of metal detectorists. It was about 40, 50 holes dug. They were clear spade marks, metal discarded, left by the holes. It was a mess.
We don't call burglars Nighthawks, we call them thieves, and that's what these people are.
And then we had another report a couple of weeks afterwards of more damage to the site. 75 to 80 holes have been found within the grounds of the castle.
And this was a real key bit for us, this pattern of crime sort of occurring at the castle. Because we didn't...
So are they mad about the landscaping? Or are they mad that somebody else is digging up the artifacts and not them? Because it would be easier to just be like, all right, let's go metal detect ourselves and get all the artifacts that we can within an X mile radius. That way there's nothing here. What is the real issue here?
Didn't really have very much to go on at that point.
Police had no idea precisely what had been taken, and identifying the criminals was impossible without CCTV or witnesses.
That's another good point. How are they criminals if it's not claimed, but it's treasure? Finders keepers, right?
The team had to wait for the thieves' next move and hope they could...
Who are they thieving it from, though? If it's in... Is the land... Okay, I guess the piece of land is owned by whoever, and whatever's in the land is owned by them too, right?
Respond quick enough.
Real concern was, during that time, what could they do with it? They could sell the articles. There was a lucrative black market. We wanted to be that team that recovered stolen treasure from a castle and returned it to them. And we had this phenomenal break. It was the day prior to New Year's Eve. Someone was trying to sell some of the artifacts that we believed had been taken from Beeston Castle.
But how do you know if it's taken from there or not? Like, how would you know? It was undiscovered before this person discovered it, so how would you know?
The artifacts included a valuable Bronze Age axe head, the first clue that the stolen goods could have significant financial worth. All holiday festivities were quickly cancelled.
There lies a challenge. It couldn't be a worst case scenario in terms of timings for us. We've all got family plans, and yet we had this information that we couldn't just sit on. As soon as the shops reopened again, there was a chance that these items would be lost. We started to get this warrant sorted. Now, we had to go to an out-of-hours magistrate to be able to get that sworn out. Then it was about trying to make sure we got the right people in place to put a door through, the right arrest.
So apparently, even if you're like doing construction, breaking new ground in the UK, if you find artifacts or treasures, like they come and stop the whole production, and like archaeologists come dig it up, and they could be there for months or years. That's what somebody just said in the chat. That's tough.
Teams, interview teams, and so on, and that can be a real logistical nightmare.
The two suspects lived on the edge of Manchester.
Oh, Manchester.
That'd be great, thank you. Okay, right. You're gonna have to be handcuffed.
Yeah, mate. No, it's fine. That's fine. We searched the address and we found metal detecting equipment. A lot of it was items that weren't of any interest or historical value.
I know this is not. This is not a thing in America. It's not a thing. I don't believe it. I don't even care if you Google it and find out it is. nobody's getting arrested for it in America.
That's fine, and we'll be good with them.
Everything rested on finding something at the home of the second suspect.
We turned up at the next address and he was quite happy to talk to us about the finds and in fact led us straight to where some of the items were.
Yeah, like for real. Imagine going to jail for this and your cellie asks you, yeah, what you locked up for? Shoot, metal detecting. You know what I'm saying? I was just digging up artifacts and things of that nature, and now I'm here. That's a crazy conversation to be having with somebody that's in there for him.
Which were located under his bed.
But none of these items were from Beeston Castle, and police couldn't prove they were stolen.
Right.
The item that we weren't looking for, which was a Bronze Age axe head, wasn't there either.
The investigation had hit a brick wall.
A brick wall.
Searching for a new home.
It's over with, man.
Cheshire police established...
This is not a real crime. Okay, yeah, it's a real crime, but like it's hard to prove anything in this crime. Like, how does this stuff even hold up in court?
Operation Roundhouse in 2019 to snare a night hawking gang, robbing historical sites for their priceless history.
But they don't even know
But
about
after 2 raids, the investigation hit a brick wall. They were certain they had the right men, but they hadn't found the stolen artifacts, so they didn't have a case.
So following the interviews then, they were both released under investigation.
The operation seized the suspects' phones. This is standard in most investigations, but what the police uncovered was startling.
No, it wasn't.
I examined the phones.
Guaranteed it wasn't
we
startling.
Discovered photographs on there, pictures of Bronze Age axe heads. We also found a WhatsApp group.
And what there was on there was a discussion between a number of males talking about their involvement in this kind of activity, night hawking, and the locations they'd go to.
God, they made it sound like it was just the craziest discovery on them.
And that was like a goldmine of information for us. It put many more suspects in the frame, and it really sort of cemented in just how involved the two suspects were.
The WhatsApp chat confirmed the gang's activity at Beeston Castle, but it also
now they're a gang.
And another night hawking theft.
Also on there we had other heritage sites across England and Wales. A site called Roach Abbey in South Yorkshire, which is a monastery, again owned by English Heritage.
The case against the criminals was slowly building, but the investigation was about to take another turn.
So we had contact from the suspect solicitor who offered up the location of the Bronze Age axe head to us, wanted to hand them in.
Although the suspect had handed over the axe heads, police needed to link them to Beeston Castle, otherwise their case was still weak.
Effectively, we recovered some of the stolen items, but how do you put them to a certain location?
We've done other types of forensic work
Soil?
before, but we've never done soil analysis.
The axe heads were...
He says soil analysis, right? Yeah, it's just soil. I'm low-key a genius, so, like, I didn't even know, but, like, it's obvious.
...sent to a specialist lab in Swindon for soil analysis.
I'm a forensic ecologist, so I use different environmental traces to look at the relationship between potential exhibits and suspects.
Feel me?
The Cheshire area is a sandstone area, but Beeston Castle itself sits on this promontory of very red, silty, sandy local geology that's very specific to that area. We took the soils from Cheshire back. We knew that we were looking at a very specific sandy type. And then we looked at the Bronze Age axe heads. And what we wanted to demonstrate is that they hadn't come from somewhere else. My initial gut feeling was that actually, because of the sandy component, there wouldn't be that much adhesion of soils to the object. But actually that wasn't a problem because all of the sand had pushed its way through over time into the base of the object and sort of accumulated. So we had this really nice adhesion of material at the bottom of the axe head that we could look at. I was looking at the two soils and I was comparing them, and there was this moment where I thought, yes, these are the same soils. These Bronze Age axe heads have come from Beeston Castle. They are part of the archaeological landscape.
That's great work.
With the
She the only one that had a real job in this whole little 10-minute spiel. That's tough.
axe heads directly linked to Beeston Castle. 3 months after the first reports came in, Operation Roundhouse was ready to arrest everyone in the gang's WhatsApp group.
We have now got this wonderful dilemma of obtaining 6 warrants, I think, in total, right across the sort of region in Manchester where the suspects lived.
She probably get paid a crazy amount for doing that. Bro, they're bringing this many people.
The same kind of techniques that we
Bro, is this armed police?
do to get into any property quickly. So we had the rip saws. We had them battering them off the hinges as well. People need to realise this kind of crime is serious, and we're not going to just go and knock on doors politely. We wanted to show just how seriously we took heritage crime. We did find coins, other artefacts that we could link back to Beeston Castle and perhaps some of the places like the one in South Yorkshire as well. Once we got all that together, it was then a chance for us to kind of regroup and get those exhibits back to one location. And when it started coming through the door and people were arriving back with bags of coins and bags of items, it was a phenomenal feeling.
There were over 50 items recovered by police. The axe heads alone
Should be able to sell them back to the museum. Like, yeah, I found this, put it in the museum, sell it back to you. Y'all don't want to go out there and dig it up, so we did. But here you, that shouldn't be. This is crazy.
And sell for hundreds of pounds, but their irreplaceable nature makes it impossible to calculate their true value. 5 men were arrested. At court, they all admitted the charge of theft by finding.
Theft by finding? What? Shut up. Theft by finding. Bro, what?
5 men are now barred from going anywhere near historic sites in England and Wales for 5 years.
They ain't get no time, okay. Please don't give them no time for this. This is ridiculous.
What we're talking about.
Theft by finding. That's too set. You can't be a thief if you find something.
Here is a group of people that have no association with the site at all. They don't own it. They don't manage it.
That's like saying death by living. What are you talking about?
This was just pure criminal behaviour.
Y'all overdoing it. Y'all overdoing it, man. TLO, leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on your post notification bells, man. This is entertaining to the point where it's like, all right, relax.